what I realized was that the higher the rate of entropy and volatility, which is the place we're in. So if I was to plot entropy, volatility, change, we're basically in the hockey stick of that curve. So the more that is happening, the more grounding we need to create. And the more inputs we're having to process, and the more we need to order the chaos. So in any complex adaptive system, there are two poles. So there's order and then there's chaos. So the purpose of a complex adaptive system in its most optimal state is to find the sweet spot between order and chaos. Because we need some order, because that creates a level of organization, and that's what creates the stability. Right? In a business, if I have a team, it's like I'm not changing my mind every week because there's a new AI tool came out. Because employees are like kids, right? They're in training to us. So there's a certain amount of order that's required. There's also a certain amount of chaos that's required because chaos is the birthplace of creativity. Chaos is where novelty comes from. Chaos is where excitement comes from. It's where inspiration comes from. It's where change comes from, innovation, disruption. And the people who are too averse to chaos, who are too rigid, they're right now, their heads are so deep into the sand because they're like, oh, AI, it's too much, it's too much. I'm just gonna, and they're gonna wake up at one point and they'll be like, oh, fuck, everything's changed. So we have to find our own sweet spot for between order and chaos. And it may change depending on the situation, depending on the context, depending on what's happening. But if we find ourselves drifting, right, if we're here, 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 what we have to do is we have to engage with intention our homeostatic response to come back to our baseline, right? And ideally, we're doing that at least on a daily basis. Could be just an internal check-in. Now, the other thing that helps us actually operate at the sweet spot is how we segment and compartmentalize time. So time is a container. Time is containerized in, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds. So you can almost see the fractal nature of time, right? And we're existing in each of these compartments. So I'm in this year, I'm also in this month, I'm also in this week, I'm also in this day, I'm also in this hour. So I'm always in these compartments of time. For me to have enough order in my system, I have to be able to have compartments that allow me to allocate energy and attention across things. And when there is not a lot happening, it's okay for me to serially process. Serial processing is for me to do this, first this needs to be done, and for this to be done, this needs to be done. Because my brain literally cannot open this loop unless this loop is closed. And it can't open this loop till this loop is closed. That's serial processing. During times of high change, which are also times of high opportunity, the thing we have to get really good at is parallel processing. So if this is serial processing, this is parallel processing. So parallel processing means that I create a bucket, a container of time for different things. So this is my bucket for expression. I'm posting every day. This is my bucket for emails. I'm sending an email every day. This is my bucket for working on the offer. This is my bucket for learning. This is my bucket for building infrastructure, like building the funnel, recording the VSL, setting up the form, all that stuff. This is my bucket for health and taking care of myself. So in simple times, it's okay for us to operate in the serial way because there isn't that much complexity, right? But when things get more complex, when the rate of change increases in the world, then what happens is that complexity increases, certainty increases, the clock speed of everything increases. So we end up facing a huge opportunity cost if we serially process things. Because then this thing is not going to be done until this is done. And if for this to get done, this needs to get done, which means this thing is going to get pushed out, right? By weeks, sometimes months.
Mhm.
But this thing ideally is being done to a certain extent every single day, right? Maybe it's not 5 hours of sitting and creating content, but can I spend 10 minutes recording a stream of consciousness reel or whatever? And can I also carve out an hour to work on infrastructure? Can I also carve out an hour to send an email? Can I? So if I can switch to parallel processing by defining the things that are important and non-negotiable, and it's not like I have to work on every single thing every single day, right? This container of time may be a week, not a day, but it could also be a day, depending on how you want to structure your time fractals. What this allows for is a rapid amount of progress to be made while making sure that we're putting in the reps on the things that benefit from more periodization. If I'm stretching my body every day, it's way more effective than me stretching my body once a month. If I'm brushing my teeth, it's actually way more effective for me to brush my teeth every day. Now, brushing my teeth, we all intuitively periodize in this way, right? I don't need to have my laundry done to brush my teeth. We get that intuitively. But when it comes to the different sub components and activities in business, we lose the periodization and the parallel processing. And what happens is that because the way we manage our brain, we only do X when Y is done, and we only do Y when Z is done. And that is what causes us to take, 2 to 10x longer to do something, and it's extremely inefficient.
Mhm.
And obviously, I'm talking about all this from personal experience and personal struggle. So we're not trying to get perfect at this, but we're trying to reflect on this ideally on a daily basis and allow ourselves to recalibrate and tweak how we're approaching it. Because if we can do that, then we can course correct at a faster rate. So that's why I was showing Eli before you guys hopped on. Where's the So this is the dashboard for the platform that's going to build in a lot of these things. There is a morning calibration and an evening reflection. So it's built in to the protocol so that every day there's a way to resync on the core things. And there's a way to commit to the different things that need to get done and parallel process across areas, because when we can parallel process across areas, especially during these times of high change, then you can really make a decade of progress in a year. So this is just a sneak peek. I'm coding this in today. This is what I've come to as a way to how to orient, because there's too much stuff. And I find I'm still in certain things like serially processing, and I'm seeing the limits of that paradigm. The parallel processing is the best way I've found to expand capacity, because to hold more, right, for bigger business, more clients, more money, we have to increase our capacity to bring order to chaos, which means we need to increase our ability to manage ourselves and manage inputs and outputs. So scaling is always rate limited by the founder's capacity to manage inputs and outputs. And plateaus occur when the founder reaches a local maximum in their capacity to manage inputs and outputs, and they literally cannot digest more growth. So what this does is it allows us to digest more growth while staying more regulated and stable, because otherwise we're gonna overclock our system and we're gonna exceed our window of tolerance. We're gonna exceed our capacity. And when we exceed our capacity, the system's gonna clamp down. And if we keep fighting it, that's when there's some sort of crash or major contraction. So what we're doing is we're trying to manage at the end ranges of our capacity and our performance, right? And to do that, we have to segment our points of focus in a way. And the simple example is, I'm brushing my teeth every day, I'm going on walks every day, I'm moving my body every day, I'm hydrating, I'm doing all the things that are important to do at the cadence that it's important to do those things. Because for me, like when I'm super absorbed in one thing, I forget about other things. Like simple things, like my mom will call me and she's like, what the fuck? You haven't been picking up my calls and you haven't called me back. But my rate limiter is my ability to parallel process there, right? And if Lee isn't bringing the cleaning lady in to clean the place and doing laundry and doing this, it's very easy for me to become unmanageable. So capacity is always rate limited by our ability to process information. And if we get better at processing information, then we can expand our capacity, because the resources are finite. We only have so much time, we only have so much energy, we only have so much attention and bandwidth. So if I want to allocate my finite resources better so that I can create larger outcomes and so that I can flow more energy through my system in the form of impact and value and money and all those things, then I have to get better at allocating that capacity. And the only way to do that is by getting better at compartmentalizing that finite capacity, because I can't increase the hours in the day. So the only leverage point I have is to get better at how I order and manage little chunks of time. So highly effective people are highly effective because they have an extremely high resolution in terms of how they manage chunks of time. The people who are not so effective are they're operating in like days or weeks or months. That's their time container for when something happens. Highly effective people are like 15-minute segments, hour-long segments. And that's actually what allows them to have multiple points of focus spread out through the day that allow them to move forward in all those areas, which is what's required when we're trying to grow any complex system, right? Because in a business, like there's different functions, different areas of focus. There's different balls that all can't be dropped and ideally get moved forward together. So for me to do that effectively, I have to get better at processing information. And for me to get better processing information, I have to increase my resolution and decrease the chunking of time. And of course, it's not just time, it's also my energy, right? It's also my attention. Those are the three core resources that constrain. So in any business, the core bottleneck is always the founder's attention. Because if you think about it, if I could clone you and there's two of you, you'd probably get double the amount done. So if we can't clone ourselves, then the next best thing is to double the resolution at which we operate. Your highest growth lever, and it's true for all of us, is going to be our ability to effectively allocate our attention. The core money-making skill, right? That is what separates, if you think of Tony Robbins or you think of Elon, right? Multiple companies, each with potentially thousands of employees. The difference between them and the average person is their ability to allocate their attention across an array of buckets, which is really a measure of their ability to handle complexity, which I would
Mm.
argue is a form of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And that form of intelligence requires an extreme level of self-awareness and self-attunement because we have to keep reflecting and keep improving our ability to allocate our attention based on the feedback from our actions. So in the platform, I'm building the whole thing based on this idea I've been obsessed with for 20 years called recursive self-improvement.
Mm.
The ability of an organism to evolve and succeed, evolutionary speaking, is rate limited by its ability to actually learn from its own behavior. A simple example is I touch hot stove, I feel pain. I learn that touching hot stove equals pain, and then I don't touch hot stove. Right? So learning is basically same input, different output.
Mm.
So my ability to look at the results of my actions and learn from it and perform different actions the next day allows me to increase the thresholds of rate limiting on my own progress. And that is what allows me to fundamentally expand my capacity. Otherwise, I'm kind of fucked because my capacity isn't changing, but my desire for more is, it's increasing, but also complexity in the world is increasing. So what's going to happen? It's happening to a lot of entrepreneurs right now, which is they feel paralyzed.
Mm.
Their system is going into freeze because they're not partitioning their consciousness effectively enough. They're not able to switch context effectively. So some balls are dropping. Maybe it's their health. It's actually definitely their health, right? Maybe it's their ability to stay connected to a very clear vision.
Mm.
Maybe it's their marriage, maybe it's fun and hobbies, but maybe it's different other things in the business that also need to get done. So this is our biggest opportunity, and I would say more than an opportunity, it's an imperative, because if I was to collapse all the stuff that's happening in the world into one sine wave, it's a very high frequency, high volatility sine wave,
Mm.
right? And what most people are trying to do is they're trying to harmonize with that. And it's extremely dysregulating to harmonize with that, because AI and technology has a way higher clock speed than our nervous systems. The thing that I should harmonize with, if I have any brain cells left, is with nature. It's with a fucking tree or with the ocean. One of the reasons why the ocean is so calming is because of the rhythmic waves. It actually perfectly harmonizes with the heartbeat, and it brings the heart into a state of coherence. And so if I'm not harmonizing with the right frequencies, then very quickly I'm going to get dysregulated, and then very quickly my system's going to go into freeze. And then I'm going to be paralyzed, and I'm going to be unable to do anything. So it's extremely critical for us to get better at managing ourselves, right? And this is the meta skill. This is not the skill of copywriting or building landing pages and creating offers and all those things. Those things are important as well. But all of that is rate limited by our ability to functionally lead ourselves to operate better. I think the alpha here, even when I was talking to Eli, like this idea of the only moat that'll be left in a few years is I have all the tools that will help me simplify the process of traveling. But the only thing that technology cannot do is create the experience that I have or that someone has when they talk to Eli, and he's talking about pay to vibe. There we go. He's talking about being in Japan during cherry blossom season and like driving through the streets of Tokyo in go-karts dressed as a Super Mario character along with a dozen friends. Like that energy is what makes someone move, right? That energy is the catalyst for something different. And so for all of us, there is an energy, there's a vibe, there's a frequency, there is something that can't be automated, that can't be turned into a product or platform that creates the X factor. And this is the time to over-index on that X factor. Because it's also where we draw energy. That's what energizes us, right? Because even as I build this platform and I'm up late, it's not building the platform that turns me on. It's what it'll make possible, because I can give Mike the platform and be like, dude, just put your offer in here and answer a couple of questions, and it'll give you a 10 email sequence that you can start sending immediately that will get you a bunch of clients over the next week. And by the way, he can be doing this at 2 a.m. and within a few minutes have something that otherwise would have taken way longer and be way more complex. So the energy always comes from the people. And so the energy is the asymmetric opportunity. And if we can use technology intelligently and as a tool, not as the thing, then it opens up a level of leverage that someone with just the technology or just the energy cannot sustain.